A stone fortress rises from California hills, white walls reflecting morning sun, Mediterranean towers reaching toward coastal sky. The architecture speaks Spanish, Italian, Moorish, ancient tiles brought across oceans, hand-carved doorways salvaged from monasteries centuries old. But this isn't Europe. This is San Simeon, California. And what you're looking at isn't just architecture, it's ambition made stone. Obsession made real. How does one man spend 28 years building a palace that never finishes? Behind those Spanish tiles and carved doorways lies infrastructure most visitors never see. Power plants running day and night, boiler rooms burning tons of coal monthly, over 100 staff members moving through hidden corridors, maintaining a fantasy that cost more per month than most American families earned in a lifetime. If you want to uncover the hidden stories behind America's grandest estates, the ones they don't tell on guided tours, subscribe now. Because what you're about to discover will change how you see every mansion. Welcome to Hearst Castles, May 2nd, 1947. Morning light spreads across San Simeon's terraces, illuminating white limestone walls that have stood for nearly 3 decades. The Pacific stretches westward, infinite and indifferent. Coastal wind carries the smell of sage, eucalyptus, salt air. The same wind that's blown across this hilltop for centuries, long before anyone thought to build a castle here. Inside La Casa Grande, in a bedroom filled with Renaissance paintings and carved Spanish furniture, an elderly man prepares to leave forever. William Randolph Hearst, 84 years old, stands at the window with assistants. His frame, once commanding enough to dominate any boardroom, any political meeting, now bent by age and illness. His hair is white, thin. His hands shake slightly as they grip the window frame. But his eyes, those eyes that built a media empire, that envisioned this impossible palace, remain alert, scanning the grounds below. The terraces fall away in careful stages toward the Pacific, exactly as he designed them. The Neptune pool, empty now, its marble colonnades catching light. The 3 guest houses, Casa del Mar, Casa del Monte, Casa del Sol, their red tile roofs glowing in morning sun. Beyond them, the Santa Lucia Mountains roll south, and farther still, the coastline curves toward Los Angeles, 250 miles distant. He has spent 28 years building this place. 28 years of constant construction, revision, expansion. The main house alone contains 115 rooms, 38 bedrooms, 41 bathrooms, sitting rooms, studies, a library whose ceiling beams came from a Spanish monastery dismantled and shipped across the Atlantic, an assembly room with silk banners and carved wood paneling that took craftsmen 6 months to install, a refectory table that seats 22, where he presided over dinners hosting presidents, movie stars, European nobility. And it's still not finished. It will never be finished. Scaffolding stands against the north wing, marking where work stopped months ago when the money finally, truly ran out. Plans for additional rooms remain rolled in Julia Morgan's San Francisco office, blueprints that will never become stone. The indoor Roman pool is complete, but other projects remain half done, abandoned mid-vision. Behind him, servants move quietly, packing his personal belongings, books from his Gothic study, photographs, a few favorite letters. Everything else stays. The artwork, Renaissance paintings, Greek sculptures, medieval tapestries, all remains. The furniture stays. The architecture is permanent. Only the man is leaving. The doctors delivered their ultimatum weeks ago. His heart can't handle the altitude anymore. 1,600 feet above sea level, and every stair has become dangerous. His cardiologist was explicit. Stay here and risk death. The castle that was supposed to make him immortal might actually kill him. So the convoy assembles in the circular driveway, 3 cars, nurses in the first vehicle. Marion Davies, 50 years old now, her blonde hair showing gray, Her face, still beautiful but worried, rides in the second car. Hearst will ride in the third, a modified Cadillac with extra cushioning and space for medical equipment. Marion has been with him 31 years. Since she was 19, a chorus girl in Ziegfeld's Follies, and he was 53, a married newspaper tycoon who saw her perform and couldn't look away. Their relationship scandalized society, ended his political ambitions, created gossip column fodder for decades. His wife, Millicent, never granted divorce. The Catholic Church refused annulment, so they lived together unofficially, permanently unmarried, permanently together. She helped him into the car. His body, which once commanded rooms through sheer presence, now needs assistance for basic movements. She doesn't speak. What is there to say? They both know he won't return. The doctors have been kind about it, professional, but the message was clear. The convoy begins its descent. 5 miles of private road, winding down the hilltop, switchbacks cutting through coastal chaparral. The road Hearst had built in 1919 specifically for construction trucks. The road that has carried millions of dollars worth of materials uphill over nearly 3 decades. Limestone from Utah, tiles from Tunisia and Spain, carved doors from Italian churches, marble columns from Greek quarries. All of it hauled up this road, ton by ton, year by year. Hearst turns in his seat, looking back through the rear window. La Cuesta Encantada, the enchanted hill. The name he gave this place when it was nothing but grassland and ambition. From this angle, descending, the castle rises like something from a fairy tale. White walls, red tiles, towers reaching upward. It looks permanent, eternal, as if it stood here for centuries and will stand for centuries more. But Hearst knows the truth. He's seen the accounting ledgers. He knows what this place costs to maintain. He knows his sons don't want it. He knows that without him, without his obsessive attention and endless funds, the castle will change, become something else, something he didn't intend. The convoy reaches the base of the hill and turns south onto Highway 1. The castle disappears behind them, swallowed by distance and coastal fog rolling in from the Pacific. William Randolph Hearst will spend his remaining years in Beverly Hills, in a rented house on Lexington Road. Comfortable but ordinary, no towers, no terraces, no Neptune pool, just a house with nurses nearby and Marion staying close. He will die there on August 14, 1951, at age 88, never having returned to San Simeon. What drives a man to build something he can never finish? What dream justifies 28 years of obsession and hundreds of millions of dollars? What makes a palace worth more than permanence? To understand the castle, we have to understand the man. And to understand the man, we have to go back to the beginning, to a boy who saw European palaces and decided he deserved one too. April 29, 1863, San Francisco, California. Civil war rages in the east, but on the Pacific coast, a different kind of war is being waged, the battle for fortune. Gold and silver pour from western mountains, creating instant millionaires and just as many broken men. Into this world arrives William Randolph Hearst, born to parents who represent 2 Americas. His father, George Hearst, embodies the rough frontier. His mother, Phoebe Apperson Hearst, represents civilization's ambitions. George Hearst's story reads like frontier mythology. Born in 1820 in Missouri, he received almost no formal education. He learned mining through experience, through failure, through watching other men strike gold while he found dust. But George possessed something rarer than luck: geological intuition. He could read landscapes. He understood where metals hide. In 1859, while most of California's prospectors searched played-out Sierra Nevada streams, George investigated rumors of silver in Nevada, the Comstock Lode, one of the richest silver discoveries in American history. George's stake in the mine generated wealth that seemed inexhaustible. Then came the Homestake Mine in South Dakota's Black Hills. Gold. More wealth. By the time William could walk, his father owned pieces of mountains across the West. But wealth alone doesn't guarantee civilization. That came from Phoebe. Phoebe Apperson, born in 1842 in Missouri, was 22 when she married George, who was 40. The age gap raised eyebrows, but Phoebe wasn't marrying for romance. She was marrying for possibility. George's wealth could fund what Phoebe truly cared about: education, culture, refinement. She was a school teacher before marriage, unusual for women of her era. She read Latin, studied history, believed passionately that education could elevate anyone, regardless of birth. When William was born, Phoebe saw him as her greatest project. Not just her son, but her chance to prove that proper cultivation could create a man of significance. She hired tutors. She filled their San Francisco mansion with books, artwork, musical instruments. She took him to museums, to lectures, to concerts, but she wanted him to see more than America could offer. So in 1873, when William turned 10, Phoebe made a decision that would shape everything that followed. They would go to Europe. Not for weeks, for 18 months. A grand tour, the kind wealthy American families used to give their children a sense of history and culture that the young nation couldn't yet provide. They sailed from San Francisco in March 1873, crossed Panama by rail, then caught another ship to England. William's first impression of London, recorded in letters Phoebe sent home to George, was awe at the age of everything. Buildings centuries old, streets where medieval markets once operated, Westminster Abbey with tombs of kings dead 500 years. But London was just the beginning. They traveled to Paris in summer 1873. The city was recovering from the Franco-Prussian War and the Paris Commune uprising, but the great buildings remained. Phoebe walked young William through the Louvre for hours, showing him paintings and sculptures, explaining artistic techniques, historical periods. They visited Versailles. The palace stretched farther than anything William had seen in America. Halls filled with mirrors, chandeliers, gilded everything, gardens that seemed endless. Something crystallized in the boy's mind as he stood in those rooms. This is what permanence looks like. This is power made visible. Not just wealth, his father had wealth, but legacy. Kings built this. It survived those kings. It will survive everyone. They continued south to Italy, Florence, Rome, Venice. Each city offered William more lessons in how beauty and power intertwine. In Florence, they toured the Pitti Palace, a Renaissance fortress converted to a royal residence. Phoebe explained the Medici family, how merchant wealth bought political power, how patronage of art created lasting reputation. William listened, absorbed. In Rome, they visited the Vatican, walked through St. Peter's Basilica. The scale astonished him. Buildings designed to make humans feel small, to make God feel infinite. But William understood the secondary message. Whoever builds something this grand becomes immortal. Pilgrims will remember the builders' names long after those builders turned to dust. They spent months in Italy, returning to certain cities multiple times. Phoebe studied Renaissance art. William studied the estates where wealthy families lived. Villas outside Florence with terraced gardens. Palazzos in Venice with facades decorated in marble and gold leaf. Each place whispered the same lesson. If you want to matter, build something that lasts. By the time they returned to San Francisco in late 1874, William Randolph Hearst had changed. He was 12 years old and already obsessed with acquisition. He started collecting immediately. Stamps first, organizing them by country and rarity, then coins, ancient Roman pieces purchased from dealers in San Francisco, then art prints, copies of paintings he'd seen in European museums. Phoebe encouraged it. She believed collecting taught discrimination, taste, historical knowledge. She gave him an allowance specifically for purchases. By his teenage years, William's bedroom looked like a small museum. Artifacts, prints, books about architecture and history, each item a reminder of what he'd seen in Europe. Each item a promise. Someday I'll build a palace too. When William left for Harvard University in 1882, his trunks contained more books and artifacts than clothing. He wasn't an exceptional student. His grades were mediocre, but he excelled at activities involving spectacle and risk. He became business manager of the Harvard Lampoon, the humor magazine, where he demonstrated early talent for publicity and attention-grabbing. The famous chamber pot incident, whether legend or truth, captures his personality perfectly. According to the story, William sent chamber pots to several professors, each engraved with that professor's name. Harvard expelled him. The details vary in different tellings, but the core truth remains. William Randolph Hearst didn't respect authority. He didn't create himself. He returned to San Francisco in 1885, expelled from Harvard, uncertain about his future. His father had acquired a failing newspaper, the San Francisco Examiner, through a gambling debt or political favor. Accounts differ. George considered it worthless, a liability that cost money monthly and generated nothing but complaints. William saw something else entirely. He saw power waiting to be seized. When William Randolph Hearst took control of the San Francisco Examiner in 1887, he was 23 years old, with no journalism experience and unlimited confidence. His father finally relented after months of William's lobbying, handing him the failing newspaper with a warning. Try not to lose too much money. William immediately began losing enormous amounts of money, but strategically. He understood something most newspaper publishers didn't. People don't buy newspapers for information alone. They buy them for emotion, for sensation, for stories that make them feel something visceral, anger, fear, curiosity, outrage, satisfaction. The Examiner's first transformation happened in the newsroom itself. Hearst fired the staid, experienced journalists and hired younger writers willing to bend rules. He instructed them, find stories that shock, crime, scandal, corruption, human drama. If a story is boring, make it interesting. If it's small, make it big. If it's complicated, simplify it into heroes and villains. Headlines grew larger, bolder. The Examiner began running stories other papers considered too sensational for respectable journalism. A murder became blood on the streets. A political scandal became corruption exposed. Hearst personally wrote many headlines, understanding instinctively that the right combination of words could stop a passerby cold, force them to buy the paper, devour the story. He also invested heavily in illustrations. Photography was still limited, so the Examiner hired sketch artists to create dramatic renderings of crime scenes, disasters, scandals. The images often bore only passing resemblance to reality, but they sold newspapers. Visual impact mattered more than accuracy. Within 2 years, the Examiner's circulation tripled. By 1890, it was San Francisco's dominant newspaper. Advertising revenue followed circulation, and suddenly the paper that George Hearst considered worthless was generating significant profit. Then, in 1891, George Hearst died. He left William approximately $20 million, equivalent to over $600 million today. Along with mining interests that would generate ongoing income, William inherited not just his father's fortune, but his appetite for expansion. In 1895, Hearst made his most aggressive move. He purchased the New York Journal for $180,000 and moved east to conquer the nation's largest media market. His rival was already established. Joseph Pulitzer, owner of the New York World, a Hungarian immigrant who'd built his own newspaper empire through sensational reporting and populist politics. The war between Hearst and Pulitzer created what critics called yellow journalism, a term derived from a comic strip character, the Yellow Kid, that both papers fought over. But the name stuck as shorthand for a new kind of reporting, exaggerated, sensationalized, sometimes fabricated, always attention-grabbing. The competition drove both men to extremes. When Pulitzer ran a story on page 1, Hearst would run a bigger story with a larger headline. When the world dropped its price to 1 cent, the journal matched. When one paper scooped the other, the rival would publish its own version, often inventing details to catch up. The Spanish-American War of 1898 became their ultimate battleground. Cuba was rebelling against Spanish colonial rule, and both newspapers saw circulation opportunity in the conflict. The journal sent artist Frederick Remington to Cuba to document the rebellion. Remington, finding the situation less dramatic than expected, allegedly telegraphed Hearst, "Everything is quiet. There is no trouble. There will be no war. I wish to return." Hearst supposedly replied, "Please remain. You furnish the pictures, and I'll furnish the war." Whether this exchange actually happened remains disputed by historians. Some consider it apocryphal, crafted by Hearst's enemies to discredit him. Others believe it captures his actual philosophy. What's undeniable is that the journal ran increasingly inflammatory stories about Spanish atrocities in Cuba, many exaggerated or completely invented. When the USS Maine exploded in Havana Harbor on February 15, 1898, killing 266 American sailors, the journal immediately blamed Spain without evidence. "The warship Maine was split in two by an enemy's secret infernal machine," screamed one headline. Another proclaimed, "Destruction of the warship Maine was the work of an enemy." The journal offered a $50,000 reward for information leading to the conviction of those responsible. Modern investigations suggest the Maine likely exploded due to an internal coal bunker fire, not a Spanish mine. But in 1898, Hearst's version dominated public opinion. Within months, America declared war on Spain. The conflict lasted 10 weeks, resulted in American acquisition of Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines, and established the United States as a global imperial power. Hearst's newspapers claimed credit, and circulation soared. By 1900, the journal was selling over 1 million copies daily. Hearst expanded aggressively. He purchased newspapers in Chicago, Boston, Los Angeles, Atlanta. By 1910, he owned 20 daily papers and 11 Sunday papers across America, reaching an estimated 3 million readers daily. Then came magazines. He bought Cosmopolitan in 1905, Good Housekeeping in 1911, Harper's Bazaar in 1913. Each acquisition added audience, advertising revenue, and influence. He entered film production, creating International Film Service to produce newsreels and eventually feature films. He invested in radio stations. By the 1920s, the Hearst Corporation was a multimedia empire generating approximately $15 million annually in profits, roughly $230 million today. William Randolph Hearst had achieved something extraordinary. He'd transformed inherited mining wealth into media power that shaped American public opinion. Presidents read his editorials. Governors sought his endorsements. When Hearst's papers opposed a political candidate, that candidate's chances diminished significantly. He served 2 terms in Congress himself, representing New York's 11th District from 1903 to 1907. He considered running for president, for governor, for mayor of New York. His political ambitions never fully materialized. His reputation for sensationalism and his obvious hunger for power made him too controversial, but his influence remained enormous. By the early 1900s, Hearst was one of the 10 wealthiest men in America. Fortune magazine estimated his peak wealth at $200 million, nearly $6 billion in today's currency. He owned mansions in New York, California, and later a castle in Wales. He collected art obsessively, purchasing everything from Renaissance paintings to medieval armor, Egyptian antiquities to entire monastery chapels disassembled and crated for shipping. Yet for all his success, something gnawed at him. Something remained unsatisfied. Newspapers turned yellow and crumbled. Headlines were forgotten within days. Political campaigns ended in victory or defeat. then vanished from memory. Even wealth itself felt temporary. His father had made millions. Yet George Hearst was already fading from public consciousness. William wanted something different, something permanent, something that would announce his existence not through ink on paper but through stone and marble and architecture that would outlast everyone who opposed him, everyone who criticized him, everyone who doubted him. He wanted what he'd seen as a 10-year-old boy in Europe. He wanted a palace. And by 1919, he would finally have the means, the land, and the perfect reason to build one. 1916. A Broadway theater in New York. William Randolph Hearst, 53 years old, married with 5 sons, sits in the audience watching the Ziegfeld Follies. On stage, a 19-year-old chorus girl moves through her routine. Marion Davies. Blonde, luminous, genuinely funny. She's from Brooklyn, daughter of a middle-class family. No particular ambitions beyond performing and perhaps a little fame. Hearst is captivated. He sends flowers, then more flowers, then gifts, then a proposal. Let me help your career. He finances her films, promotes her in his newspapers, ensures she gets leading roles, even when the reviews suggest she's better suited to comedy than the serious drama he keeps casting her in. Hollywood whispers. His wife, Millicent, refuses divorce. The Catholic Church won't annul the marriage. So Hearst and Marion exist in a permanent state of unofficial union. Society calls her his mistress. The newspapers, everyone's newspapers except his, hint at scandal, but to Hearst, Marion is home. She's uncomplicated in ways the rest of his life isn't. She doesn't want power or position. She wants to laugh, to dance, to live without the weight of empire pressing down on every moment. Their relationship will last 34 years, longer than most marriages. She'll stay with him until his death, even as his fortune crumbles and the castle he builds for her becomes impossible to maintain. Marion represents something Hearst never quite achieves elsewhere: genuine affection without transaction. In a life built on leverage, influence, and acquisition, she's the one thing he can't buy and doesn't have to. April 13th, 1919. Phoebe Apperson Hearst dies at 76, leaving her son $11 million in cash and 250,000 acres of California ranch land. The money matters. The land matters more. It's called Camp Hill, a remote stretch along the California coast between Los Angeles and San Francisco. The Hearst family used it for camping trips when William was young. He remembers those nights under stars, the smell of coastal grass, the way hills rolled down to meet the Pacific. Now, at 56 years old, with a fortune from his publishing empire and this new inheritance from his mother, Hearst decides to build. Not a house, something grander, a place where he can display the art he's been collecting for decades, where he can entertain Hollywood stars, political figures, and European aristocracy, where Marion can feel like a queen, even if the law won't let her be his wife. He writes to an architect named Julia Morgan, "I would like to build a little something up on the hill at San Simeon. That little something will consume the next 28 years of his life." Julia Morgan, born January 20th, 1872 in San Francisco, is not an obvious choice for a project of this scale. She's a woman in a profession that barely admits women exist. She stands 5 feet tall. She's quiet, almost shy in person, preferring drawings to conversation. But her mind is precise, her calculations flawless, and her determination absolute. After studying civil engineering at UC Berkeley, rare enough for a woman in the 1890s, she applied to the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris, the world's most prestigious architecture school. They rejected her. Women aren't accepted. She applied again. Rejected. For 2 years she stayed in Paris, studying independently, submitting applications, refusing to leave. Finally, in 1898, the École relented. Julia Morgan became the first woman ever admitted to its architecture program. She didn't just pass, she excelled. She studied under Beaux-Arts masters who taught symmetry, proportion, classical orders. She learned structural engineering in ways most architects never bother to. When she returned to San Francisco in 1902, she brought European precision back to California's rough-edged coast. By 1904, she'd opened her own firm. By 1919, when Hearst contacts her, she's already designed over 200 buildings. Mostly for women's organizations, colleges, YWCA facilities. Solid, practical work. Nothing like what Hearst is about to propose. Hearst doesn't want practical. He wants spectacular. He wants Spanish Revival meets Mediterranean fantasy. He wants towers, terraces, courtyards, fountains. He wants a castle that could have been transported from Andalusia, but built with California materials by American labor. And he wants it to keep changing, growing, evolving as his vision expands. Most architects would walk away. Julia Morgan signs on. The partnership will last nearly 3 decades. She'll make over 550 trips from San Francisco to San Simeon, a 6-hour drive each way. She'll manage hundreds of workers. She'll redesign wings multiple times as Hearst changes his mind. She'll solve structural problems that would break lesser engineers, and she'll do it all without raising her voice, without drama, with nothing but blueprints and calculations and the quiet confidence that she can build anything he can imagine. Ground breaks in 1919. The site sits at 1,600 feet above sea level, accessible only by a narrow, winding dirt road. There's no water source beyond what small springs provide. No electricity. No infrastructure of any kind. Everything must be built from zero. Julia Morgan surveys the hilltop and begins designing not just a house, but the systems that will make a house possible. A reservoir to hold water, a power plant to generate electricity, roads capable of handling trucks carrying tons of stone and timber, worker housing, because no one can commute to this isolated peak daily. The first structure isn't the mansion. It's called House A, later renamed Casa del Mar, a guest house. 18 rooms, terraces overlooking the ocean. Designed in Spanish colonial revival style, with white stucco walls and red tile roofs. It takes 2 years to complete. While workers build, Hearst visits occasionally, staying in tents, watching his vision take shape. Marion joins him. They picnic on the hillside, imagining what will rise here. Casa del Mar finishes in 1921. Hearst immediately wants more. Casa del Monte. Casa del Sol. 3 separate guest houses, each large enough to be a mansion on its own. And then, the main house, La Casa Grande. This is where ambition becomes obsession, where a little something becomes something else entirely. The main building alone will contain 115 rooms, 38 bedrooms, 41 bathrooms, 14 sitting rooms, a library with ceiling beams imported from Spanish monasteries, a Gothic study paneled in carved wood that took craftsmen months to install, an assembly room, effectively a ballroom, with silk banners hanging from walls, and a carved ceiling Julia Morgan acquires from an Italian palazzo. The materials come from everywhere. Limestone from quarries in Utah and Arizona, tiles from Tunisia, Spain, Italy, carved wooden doors from churches and monasteries across Europe. Hearst has been buying architectural elements for years, through agents in London, Paris, Madrid. Now he has a place to put them. Workers arrive from across California. Stone masons, carpenters, plasterers, electricians, plumbers, landscapers. At peak construction, over 150 men work simultaneously on the hilltop. Many are Italian immigrants, brought in for their masonry skills. Others are local laborers, happy for steady employment during economically uncertain times. They live in barracks built specifically for them. Wake before dawn, work until sunset. The job is hard, dangerous, and constant. Falls from scaffolding, injuries from equipment. The isolation itself becomes a challenge. Supplies delayed by weather, materials arriving damaged, designs changing mid-construction, because Hearst has seen something new in Europe and wants it incorporated immediately. Julia Morgan manages it all. She rides the rough roads, inspects every detail, argues with Hearst about structural feasibility when his desires exceed engineering reality. She wins some arguments, she loses others, but the work continues. By 1925, Casa Grande's basic structure is complete, but Hearst keeps adding. An indoor swimming pool, the Neptune Pool, takes shape outside. 104 feet long, fed by mountain springs, decorated with Italian marble colonnades and a Greek temple facade. Hearst redesigns it 3 times. Each redesign requires draining the pool, tearing out previous work, starting over. The costs mount. Construction expenses reach approximately $60,000 per month in 1920s dollars, equivalent to nearly $1 million monthly today. And that's just construction. Operating the estate once it's functional will cost even more. Stand in the assembly room and you see silk, carved wood, Renaissance paintings. Step past those rooms and another face appears. Deep in Casa Grande's basement, boiler rooms operate around the clock. Coal arrives by truck, tons of it quarterly, shoveled into furnaces that heat water for the entire hilltop. The heating system alone employs 3 full-time operators. Electricity comes from a dedicated power plant built near the base of the hill. Generators run constantly. When they fail, and they do, the entire estate goes dark. Technicians work in shifts to prevent that. Water management becomes an engineering challenge. Julia Morgan solves through a series of reservoirs and pumping stations. The hilltop springs provide some water, but not nearly enough for swimming pools, fountains, gardens, and a household staff of over 60 people. Water is pumped uphill, stored, rationed, monitored. During drought years, restrictions get imposed. The Neptune Pool can't be filled. Gardens are scaled back. The kitchens operate at near industrial scale. Hearst entertains constantly. Weekend parties that stretch to weeks. Hollywood actors, European nobility, politicians, journalists. Guests arrive Friday afternoon and sometimes don't leave until the following Thursday. Feeding them requires a staff of cooks, prep workers, dishwashers operating from refrigerated storage rooms, the size of small warehouses. Service corridors run throughout Casa Grande, hidden from guest view. Narrow staircases, unadorned hallways, passages that allow staff to move invisibly. Maids, footmen, valets, cooks, they circulate through these arteries unseen. Fires are lit before guests wake. Beds are turned down while they dine. Dishes disappear between courses. The fantasy requires machinery, and machinery requires people. Payroll records from the San Simeon Historical Archive list over 100 permanent staff by 1930. Head butler, assistant butler, under butlers. Head housekeeper, assistant housekeepers, chambermaids, laundry staff, head gardener, and a team of 20 gardeners maintaining the grounds. Chauffeurs, mechanics for the fleet of vehicles, a telephone operator managing the estate's private switchboard. Salaries range from $50 per month for junior maids to $300 per month for senior positions. Decent wages for the era, though modest compared to what it costs Hearst to maintain one weekend party. Food, wine, entertainment, fresh flowers flown in from Los Angeles. A single weekend can exceed $10,000 in 1930s dollars. Some workers are named in records. Giuseppe Casu, master stonemason from Tuscany, age 47, works on the estate for 15 years. Margaret O'Connell, head housekeeper, age 52, from County Cork, manages the indoor staff with precision. James Jimmy Richardson, age 34, serves as head chauffeur and sometime confidant to Hearst himself. Others remain anonymous in ledgers. General labor, $2.50 day. Temporary mason, seasonal. Gardener, part-time. One death is recorded. Thomas Egan, 29, laborer, falls from scaffolding during Neptune Pool reconstruction in 1927. The coroner's report notes death by misadventure. His family receives $500 from the estate. No further record exists of them. This parallel world is designed to remain invisible. Guests see marble, gold, art. They don't see the coal dust, the machinery, the 100 hands that make their comfort possible. But it's there, always running, always costing, always demanding more. The late 1920s and early 1930s represent Hearst Castle at its peak. Construction continues, it always continues, but the estate is functional, livable, magnificent. Hearst's invitation list reads like a Hollywood directory. Charlie Chaplin, Cary Grant, Greta Garbo, Clark Gable, Joan Crawford. They arrive by train to San Luis Obispo, then private car up the winding hill. The rules are explicit. No drunkenness, no ostentatious displays, and absolutely no mention of death. Hearst is superstitious. He believes talking about death invites it. The weekends follow a pattern. Guests arrive Friday afternoon, assigned rooms in one of the guest houses, cocktails at 7:30 p.m. in the assembly room, dinner at 8 Salinas. Hearst presides from the head of a massive refectory table, Marion beside him. The table seats 22 comfortably, more if needed. Food is elaborate, California cuisine, mixed with European influences. Wine flows freely, despite prohibition. Hearst's political connections ensuring supply. After dinner, a film screening in the private theater. Hearst built a 50-seat cinema specifically for this purpose. Sometimes they watch Marion's latest film. He produces them through Cosmopolitan Pictures, always hoping for a critical success that never quite arrives. Sometimes new Hollywood releases. Sometimes newsreels of his own making. Days are less structured. Guests ride horses through the 250,000-acre ranch, play tennis on private courts, swim in the Neptune pool while peacocks wander the terraces. Hearst keeps a private zoo, the largest in America at the time. Zebras, elephants, giraffes, exotic birds. Visitors can watch them from safe distances, another fantasy element in an already fantastical setting. Winston Churchill visits. George Bernard Shaw, President Calvin Coolidge, Charles Lindbergh after his transatlantic flight. These aren't just social occasions. Hearst is networking, cultivating influence, demonstrating power. Look what I built. Look who comes when I call. Marion moves through it all as hostess, charming guests with her genuine warmth. She lacks the pretension many expect from a media tycoon's companion. She tells jokes, sometimes bawdy ones. She organizes costume parties where Hollywood royalty dresses as medieval knights or Egyptian pharaohs. Photographs from these events show people genuinely enjoying themselves, not performing enjoyment. But underneath the champagne and laughter, pressure builds. The stock market crashes. In October 1929, Hearst's fortune, invested heavily in real estate and newspapers, takes immediate damage. The Great Depression follows, and with it, newspaper circulation declines. Advertising revenue drops. His magazines struggle. By 1932, the Hearst Corporation faces serious financial trouble. The company operates on debt, borrowing against assets to fund expansion. When those assets lose value and revenue drops, the math stops working. Hearst's annual income, once estimated at $15 million per year, falls to $3 million. Still enormous by average standards, not enough to maintain his lifestyle. San Simeon alone costs approximately $500,000 annually to operate in the 1930s. That's roughly $10 million today, every year. Whether Hearst uses it or not, staff still need paying, boilers still burn coal, gardens require maintenance, the zoo animals still eat. He owns properties beyond San Simeon. A castle in Wales, St. Donats, purchased in 1925 for $120,000, renovated at costs exceeding $1 million. A beach house in Santa Monica, multiple apartments in New York, art warehouses filled with pieces he's still buying at auction, unable to stop himself even as his accountants beg him to. In 1937, the financial crisis reaches a point where intervention becomes necessary. A consortium of banks, led by Chase National Bank, forces Hearst into a financial restructuring. He's required to sell assets, newspapers, radio stations, real estate. Artwork he's collected for decades goes to auction. The inventory is staggering. Medieval tapestries, Renaissance paintings, ancient sculptures, architectural elements never installed at San Simeon. Christie's and Sotheby's hold massive sales. Hearst is humiliated. In his 70s, watching his empire dismantled piece by piece. He retains control of some newspapers and his California properties, including San Simeon. But the golden era has ended. Construction at the castle slows dramatically. By 1938, only maintenance work continues. The indoor pool remains unfinished. Plans for additional wings are abandoned. Julia Morgan's trips to San Simeon become less frequent. There's no money for her grand designs anymore. December 1941, America enters World War II. San Simeon, perched on the coast, falls under military scrutiny. Blackout regulations are enforced. The estate's lights, once visible from the Pacific, a beacon of wealth and power, must be extinguished at night. Hearst resents it. Gasoline is rationed. Rubber is rationed. Travel becomes difficult. The Hollywood crowd stops visiting, not from lack of interest, but from lack of means. Many are involved in war efforts. Others are overseas. The parties that defined San Simeon in the 1930s simply stop happening. Hearst and Marion stay at the castle more permanently now, but it's not the same. The guest houses sit empty. The assembly room, designed for crowds, hosts only the two of them. Staff is reduced. Many younger workers have enlisted or taken better-paying jobs in wartime. Factories. The zoo becomes problematic. Feeding exotic animals during wartime shortages isn't just expensive, it's politically awkward. Hearst begins donating animals to public zoos. The giraffes go to San Diego, the elephants to Los Angeles. By 1943, only a few zebras and some birds remain. Hearst's health declines. He turns 80 in April 1943. His heart is weak. His mobility limited. The castle's stairs become increasingly difficult to navigate. He spends more time in his Gothic study, surrounded by books, writing letters, reading newspapers. He still controls his media empire, diminished as it is. But he's no longer building, no longer expanding, no longer dreaming in marble and stone. Marion remains devoted. She has her own money from film residuals and investments Hearst helped her make years ago. When his finances collapsed, she quietly loaned him $1 million to prevent further asset sales. It's a reversal neither speaks of publicly. The showgirl who became his companion is now his financial support. By 1945, the war has ended, but Hearst's health continues deteriorating. He suffers heart trouble. His doctors recommend he leave San Simeon. The altitude, 1,600 feet, strains his heart. The stairs are dangerous. There's no medical facility nearby if emergency strikes. Hearst refuses. This is his house, his creation. He spent 26 years building it. He's not leaving. The doctors insist. Marion insists. His sons, now in their 40s and 50s, managing what remains of the Hearst Corporation, insist. The castle isn't equipped for someone in his condition. It was built for spectacle, not for an elderly man with cardiac issues. Finally, in May 1947, Hearst relents. The convoy assembles. Multiple cars to carry him, Marion, nurses, staff. They pack clothes, personal items, some favorite books. Everything else stays. As they descend the private road, Hearst looks back. La Casa Grande rises behind them, white against blue sky. The towers he designed based on a Spanish cathedral. The terraces where he hosted presidents and movie stars. The Neptune pool where parties once lasted until dawn. He tells Marion, "I'll come back when I'm stronger." He never does. Hearst spends his final years in Beverly Hills, in a rented house on Lexington Road. Not the castle he built, not surrounded by his art collection, just a comfortable house with medical staff nearby. Marion stays with him. His wife Millicent, still legally Mrs. Hearst, visits occasionally, but maintains a separate residence in New York. William Randolph Hearst dies on August 14, 1951, at age 88. His estate is estimated at $59.5 million, substantial, but a fraction of what he once controlled. Most of it goes to his 5 sons and a charitable foundation. Marion receives nothing in the will, Hearst's family ensuring she's excluded despite their 34-year relationship. She doesn't fight it. She takes her own money and lives out her remaining years in relative quiet, dying in 1961. After Hearst's death, his sons inherit San Simeon. None of them want to live there. The operating costs remain astronomical. The Hearst Corporation, still recovering from its 1937 financial crisis, can't justify maintaining a private castle no one uses. 3 options exist: sell it, demolish it, or donate it. Selling proves difficult. Who buys a 115-room hilltop castle with $500,000 annual operating costs? Private buyers don't emerge. Developers aren't interested. The land is valuable, but the building itself is a liability. Demolition is considered. Seriously considered. Strip the valuable art and architectural elements, bulldoze the structures, sell the land. Some family members support this. It would solve the financial burden immediately, but Julia Morgan argues against it. Now in her 70s, retired from active practice, she writes letters to the Hearst family. This building represents 28 years of work. It's architecturally significant. It shouldn't be destroyed. The third option emerges: donate it. In 1957, the Hearst Corporation offers San Simeon to the state of California. Not as a gift, they want tax benefits, but as a donation with conditions. The state must maintain it, preserve it, open it to the public. California accepts. On June 2, 1958, Hearst Castle becomes a California state park. Admission is charged, $2 per person initially. Visitors are limited to guided tours of specific areas. The artwork, the furniture, the architectural elements all remain in place. It opens to the public in 1958. The first year draws 200,000 visitors. Within a decade, annual attendance exceeds 500,000. Today, over 750,000 people visit yearly. The irony isn't subtle. Hearst built this place as a private refuge, a personal palace where he could live among beauty, away from public scrutiny. Now tourists walk through his bedroom, his bathrooms, his private study. They swim in the pools he designed for exclusive parties. They photograph the art he collected. The castle he wanted as legacy has become one. Just not the legacy he imagined. The official construction cost for Hearst Castle, approximately $10 million between 1919 and 1947. Adjusted for inflation, roughly $400 million today. But that number only counts materials and direct labor. It doesn't count the land, inherited but valuable. It doesn't count operating costs over 3 decades. It doesn't count the artwork, purchased separately over 50 years at costs exceeding the construction itself. It doesn't count Hearst's own time, 28 years of constant involvement, revision, expansion. A realistic total cost, including all factors, approaching $1 billion in modern currency, for a house one man used recreationally for about 20 years. The human cost is harder to calculate. Records list one confirmed death, Thomas Egan in 1927. But construction injuries weren't always reported. Men working at height, handling heavy stone, operating early 20th century equipment without modern safety standards. How many injuries went unrecorded? How many workers left San Simeon with chronic back problems, damaged lungs from silica dust, hearing loss from constant noise? The Italian masons, the Mexican laborers, the Irish maids, they appear in payroll ledgers as names and numbers. Their stories don't survive. Giuseppe Casu worked 15 years on the hilltop. What did he think about while installing tiles in the Neptune pool? Did he resent the wealth he was building for someone else? Did he take pride in the craftsmanship? We don't know. History doesn't preserve the thoughts of working men unless those men become famous. Margaret O'Connell, head housekeeper, managed a staff of 30. She worked 14-hour days during party weekends. She earned $300 monthly when Hearst spent $10,000 on a single weekend's entertainment. Did she find that disparity unjust? Or did she consider her job a privilege, steady employment during economic uncertainty? The records don't say. This is what makes Hearst Castle fascinating and frustrating. It's a monument to one man's vision, built by hundreds of people whose names and stories are largely lost. The beauty is real. The craftsmanship is exceptional. But it exists because of invisible labor, financed by an empire built on sensational journalism and media influence. Stand on the hilltop today, and the view remains stunning. The Pacific stretches westward, infinite and indifferent. The Neptune pool reflects blue sky. The towers still reach upward, their Spanish tiles catching sunlight. But William Randolph Hearst isn't here. Julia Morgan isn't here. The workers who built it aren't here. The Hollywood stars who partied here aren't here. What remains is stone, tile, wood, and questions. Can beauty justify excess? Does architectural significance excuse the inequality that funded it? Should we preserve monuments built on foundations of privilege we now question? There are no easy answers. Hearst Castle is simultaneously a triumph of architecture and a symbol of Gilded Age inequality. It's a workspace where Julia Morgan broke gender barriers and a playground built while working families struggled. It's a museum that educates millions and a shrine to one man's ego. Perhaps the real lesson isn't about the castle itself. It's about impermanence. Hearst spent 28 years building something he believed would secure his legacy. Yet he died in a rented house, forced away from his creation by failing health. The place that was supposed to make him immortal became a place he couldn't inhabit. The castle survived him, but on terms he never controlled. Open to the public, he wanted to exclude. Managed by a state government he often opposed. Interpreted by historians who question his values and methods. In the end, La Cuesta Encantada, the enchanted hill, proved enchanted only temporarily. Beauty built on unsustainable foundations will always collapse under its own weight. The question isn't whether it will fail. The question is what we learn from watching it happen. Hearst learned too late. We're still learning now. The castle stands. The man is gone. And the cost, financial, human, moral, remains uncounted in any ledger that survives.